There is a very specific kind of morning that settles over the Missouri River Valley in late spring.
It is a heavy sort of morning, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. If you are listening to this right now, perhaps sitting alone in a quiet room with a cup of coffee, or, watching the dawn slowly define the edges of your own windows, you might know the exact feeling I am trying to describe.
It's that moment right before the world wakes up.
Precisely. It is Monday, May 18th, 2026, here in Atchison, Kansas, and the air moving off the river is already warm. It's heavy with that distinct Midwestern humidity that feels less like weather and more like an actual physical presence in the room with you.
You can almost feel the barometric pressure dropping in your chest.
You really can. But the skies above the old brick buildings downtown are this darkening, bruised, greenish-gray color.
The color of an approaching storm.
Exactly. You can hear the restless winds moving through the high branches of the cottonwood trees, turning the pale undersides of the leaves outward. And somewhere down the street, there is the distant, solemn tolling of church bells, echoing against the stone facades.
All while the pale yellow of the street lamps is just beginning to fade into those storm clouds.
It creates this inescapable feeling in the air that heavy thunderstorms are going to arrive by evening.
It is a strange, melancholic beauty. A spring poised on the absolute edge of summer. You feel it in that sudden stillness that occasionally interrupts the wind.
Like the earth is holding its breath.
Yes, caught between the gentle rains of April and the violent burning heat of July. When you sit in a room like this, listening to the morning unfold, you become acutely aware of time passing, of seasons turning, of things leaving.
It is a time of inevitable transition.
It is, and we are so glad you are here with us in this quiet space, sharing this early hour before the demands of the day pull us all in 1,000 different directions. There is a profound comfort in simply watching the weather change together.
That sense of transition, of passing time, and specifically the agonizing, beautiful necessity of leaving enchanted places behind, that is actually the mission of our deep dive today.
We have quite a stack of sources sitting on the desk between us this morning.
We do. They range from the ancient Gospel of Matthew to a daily morning prayer, a mid-century radio drama, and a newly written mystery story. But underneath them all, they are circling a single profound mystery.
The concept of departing.
The necessity of stepping out of the enclosed, safe spaces of our lives. And the strange paradox that sometimes true presence can only be found in a kind of absence.
It is an idea that runs so deeply through our history, our literature, our theology.
And if we're going to understand how it works, I think we have to start at the source. We have to start on a mountaintop in Galilee.
A departure that quietly, inexplicably changed the architecture of the world.
Let us consider today's gospel reading. It is taken from the Douay-Rheims translation, the end of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 16 through 20. The setting itself is remarkably sparse.
Just a handful of Galilean fishermen.
Right. These are not aristocrats. They are not philosophers holding court in Athens, and they are certainly not soldiers. They are standing on a mountain, and they are listening to their teacher.
A man who had recently been executed by the Roman state.
Yes, and who, defying all natural law, is standing before them alive. And Christ says to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me." What follows is perhaps the most historically and philosophically absurd command ever recorded in human literature.
What we now call the Great Commission.
He tells these unknown, unlettered men, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you."
We really need to pause and inhabit the emotional truth of those men on that mountain.
It is hard to do from this distance.
It is. We read these verses now through the lens of 2,000 years of history, sitting safely in our homes, viewing it through the stained glass of great cathedrals.
But in that raw moment,
They were profoundly uncertain men. These were the very same men who, just weeks prior, had abandoned this teacher out of pure, suffocating fear.
they had fled into the dark.
They had wept bitterly in courtyards. They had locked themselves in upper rooms, terrified of the sound of footsteps on the stairs, and now they are being sent out into a deeply hostile world.
A world governed by the iron machinery of the Roman Empire.
And the rigid, unforgiving authority of the temple? The human uncertainty they must have felt, standing there, looking down at the valleys they were expected to conquer with nothing but words and water. It must have been paralyzing.
I struggle with that a little, though. Is it really just fear? Or is it a fundamental, rational realization of their own utter lack of qualification?
How do you mean?
Well, if you are starting a global empire, You don't deploy hesitant, grieving fishermen. You deploy highly trained legions. You secure supply lines. You build alliances.
Right. From a purely strategic standpoint, it makes no sense.
But the paradox of Christianity is that it begins in apparent total weakness. It is not a military campaign. It is a departing teacher sending away his heartbroken friends.
He is leaving them. He is ascending.
And yet, the mission he entrusts to them requires an impossible expansion of their own borders. They are not told to retreat to a quiet monastery by the sea and preserve his memory.
They are told to go out into the teeth of the empire.
How did that mechanism even work? How do you conquer a violent world by losing the physical presence of your leader?
I think you can only do it if the physical presence is replaced by something far more pervasive.
Something invisible but constant.
Yes. That impossible command is immediately followed by the only promise that could make it bearable. It is the consolation that anchors the entire Christian imagination. He says to them, "And behold, I am with you all days, even to the consummation of the world."
Think about the weight of that word, consummation.
The absolute completion, the final wrapping up of all time and space. He is leaving your physical sight, but he is promising an unending, invisible companionship.
Which redefines what courage actually means in this context.
It does. Courage on that mountain does not mean the absence of fear. How could they not be afraid of the Romans?
It would be irrational not to be.
Exactly. Courage means the willingness to move forward into the mud, into the danger, into the crushing reality of the ancient world, entirely because of a promise of unseen companionship.
They went down the mountain not because they felt strong,
but because they believed they were not alone. They were carrying a presence within an absence.
But that raises a very difficult question for us sitting here in the present day. If the Ascension demands that we step into the hostile world, how do you sustain that kind of courage over 2,000 years without the physical presence of the teacher?
It is a profound challenge. The initial adrenaline of the mountaintop inevitably fades.
The early church faced centuries of persecution, and modern listeners face their own quiet, persistent struggles.
The answer, looking at our next source, seems to lie in rhythm.
We have the Chesterton Radio Morning Prayer for Ascensiontide, specifically for this Sunday, May 17th, falling in Psalter Week 3.
There is something deeply grounding about this practice. Listeners around the world quietly pulling this text up on their screens, or perhaps reading from a printed page in the early hours.
It acts as a steady rhythm, an anchor in the storm of modern life.
It creates a shared solitude. You are alone in your room, perhaps watching the rain start to streak the glass, just as it is beginning to do outside our window now. But you are joining a chorus of voices that stretches across the globe and backward through centuries.
The imagery in this specific morning prayer is breathtaking in its scope. It begins with the simple, quiet opening of the lips. Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall declare thy praise.
But immediately it shifts our gaze upward.
With the invitatory antiphon, yes. Come, let us adore Christ the Lord who ascends into heaven, alleluia. And then it moves into Psalm 94 or 95 in the modern numbering.
For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods.
For in his hand are all the ends of the earth, and the heights of the mountains are his. For the sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land.
It grounds the cosmic event of the Ascension in the very dirt and water we walk upon.
The true crescendo of this prayer, though, is the Canticle of Daniel chapter 3. It is a passage that completely dismantles our modern sterile view of the universe.
We are so accustomed to treating the natural world as a dead machine, a collection of atoms and weather patterns.
But this canticle treats the world as a living, breathing liturgy. It calls on everything to bless the Lord. O ye fire and heat, bless the Lord. O ye cold and heat, bless the Lord.
O ye dews and hoarfrosts, bless the Lord. O ye frost and cold, bless the Lord.
O ye ice and snow, bless the Lord. O ye nights and days, bless the Lord. O ye light and darkness, bless the Lord. O ye lightnings and clouds, bless the Lord.
Reading that on a morning like this, when the lightnings and clouds are literally gathering over the river valley outside, it changes the way you experience the weather.
The storm isn't just meteorology. It becomes a participant in the Ascension.
It creates a beautiful tension, because the reflection included in the Substack post highlights what it calls the paradox of the day.
The paradox is this. Christ leaves the earth, and therefore the earth is not abandoned. He goes up into heaven, and therefore heaven comes down into the hearts of men.
I really want to explore the mechanics of that, because the reflection provided in the text explores this with a very grounded, deeply human analogy.
The child and the father.
Yes. It compares the Ascension to a child who thinks his father has vanished when he simply enters the next room. The text says, the child who thinks his father has vanished when he enters the next room is not entirely wrong in feeling the loss, but he is wrong if he thinks the house has become fatherless.
The father has merely taken a different position of authority.
He is no longer sitting at the kitchen table. He is running the entire estate from the study.
It is a profound shift in perspective. The modern mind has a terrible habit of viewing heaven as a vast, empty distance, a sort of vacuum in outer space.
We think of distance as absence.
But the Christian imagination, as this reflection notes, views heaven as a throne room. Christ does not ascend like a balloon escaping into the clouds, drifting away into nothingness until he pops.
He ascends as a king entering his court. He takes his seat. It is a terrifying and tender authority. He is running the estate from the study.
G.K. Chesterton is quoted in the prayer as well, offering one of his most famous observations. He said, "Angels can fly because they can take themselves lightly."
It is a lovely thought, and it connects directly to the appearance of the angels in the book of Acts, which is also read in this morning prayer.
As the apostles are staring upward into what the text calls the blue astonishment above Galilee, two men in white garments stand by them and ask a wonderfully practical, almost comic question.
Ye men of Galilee, why stand you looking up to heaven?
It is such a necessary interruption. The angels are not scolding the disciples for adoring their departing Lord.
No, they're preventing them from becoming statues. They are breaking the paralysis of grief and awe.
Because the Ascension, as the reflection points out, turns gazers into witnesses. True spirituality isn't just standing in a field staring at the sky, waiting for the end of the world.
And true realism isn't just staring at the mud and concluding that dirt is all there is.
Christianity does something stranger. It tells you to look up, to see the throne room, and then it sends you right back down into the mud with your eyes full of heaven.
That is the mission. That is the Great Commission realized in the physical world.
But if the Ascension demands that we step out of our paralysis and into the hostile reality of the world, how did early media actually try to communicate that terrifying reality to people sitting safely in their living rooms?
That brings us to a fascinating piece of history.
We have been reviewing a mid-century radio drama rebroadcast by the Greymoor Friars of the Atonement. It is an episode of the Ave Maria Hour, specifically focusing on the Ascension. And listening to this old broadcast is a remarkable experience.
There is a unique atmosphere to old religious radio that we have largely lost today. It possesses a quiet reverence.
The pacing is incredibly deliberate.
It doesn't rush, it doesn't rely on explosive sound effects or hyper-optimized emotional manipulation. There is an unironic sincerity to it that contrasts very sharply with our modern media landscape, which often feels drenched in cynicism or irony.
You can hear the static of the old recordings, the earnestness in the voices of the actors. It feels lived in. What struck me most deeply in listening to this script was the emotional narrative arc of the apostles, particularly the portrayal of Thomas.
We usually hear him described merely as stubborn, the doubting Thomas.
But this radio play frames his doubt as a profound intellectual defense mechanism.
In the drama, the other apostles are trying to convince him that they have seen the Lord. And Thomas argues back, saying that men who are borne down with grief, men who think fervently on a subject, often see that which they ponder in their minds.
He compares it to a thirsting man in the desert seeing water where there is none.
Right, he says, I know how fickle the imagination is, and I always restrain myself when it's a question of something I want to believe very deeply.
But I wonder if we're giving him too much credit by calling it intellectual. Is he really just applying a rigorous empirical standard? Or is he just deeply wounded and refusing to be heard again?
I think it is the psychology of trauma. It is a heartbreakingly tender realism. Thomas is not saying he doesn't want Christ to be alive. He is saying he wants it so desperately that he is terrified his own mind will play a cruel trick on him.
He is protecting his own fragile sanity in the wake of immense trauma.
He refuses to be misled by his own grief. It makes the moment Christ finally appears to him all the more powerful. Christ doesn't rebuke his logic. He simply offers the physical proof Thomas's wounded mind required. Bring here thy finger, put it into my side.
It is a profound understanding of human psychology, broadcast to families sitting around their radios decades ago.
The drama then shifts to the scene at the Sea of Tiberias. The detail in the audio production is vivid.
You can hear the water lapping against the wood, the empty nets being pulled in after a long, fruitless night, and then in the breaking dawn, the stranger on the shore calling out to them to cast the net to the right of the boat.
The miraculous catch,
And the script includes that very specific detail from the Gospel of John, the counting of the fish. 150, 51, 52, 53, 153 fishes.
It's such a peculiar detail to include in an audio drama.
Why include that? Why, in the midst of a cosmic resurrection, does the author pause to give us a mundane inventory of a fishing net?
Because it grounds the cosmic in the ordinary. In the midst of this immense theological revelation of the resurrected Christ, fishermen are still fishermen.
They are practical men.
They count the catch. The spiritual world does not erase the physical world, it elevates it.
And then, by the charcoal fire on the beach, we reach the poignant reconciliation between Christ and Peter. After Peter had denied him 3 times in the courtyard, Christ asks him 3 times, "Simon, son of John, dost thou love me?"
The actor playing Peter in this broadcast captures the rising desperation and sorrow in Peter's voice as the question is repeated. "Lord, thou knowest all things, thou knowest that I love thee."
But the emotional weight of that scene culminates in the prophecy Christ gives to Peter. He says, "When thou wast young, thou didst gird thyself and walk where thou wouldst. But when thou art old, thou wilt stretch forth thy hands, and another will gird thee and lead thee where thou wouldst not."
It is a devastating prophecy.
It is a promise of martyrdom, yes, but fundamentally it is a promise of a loss of autonomy.
It is the ultimate sacrifice of the self for the sake of the sheep. And that sacrifice is necessary because the shepherd is leaving. As the narrator of the radio play puts it, the shepherd was gone, the vicar remained, and he had been charged to feed the lambs.
That theme carries directly into the drama's depiction of Pentecost. The rushing wind, the tongues of fire, the disciples burst out of their locked rooms speaking in foreign tongues.
The crowd is bewildered, accusing them of being drunk on new wine.
And Peter, the vicar who has taken over for the shepherd, stands up and defends them. The transformation of Peter from the man shivering by the fire in the courtyard to the man roaring the truth in the streets of Jerusalem is the direct result of the Ascension and the descent of the Spirit.
What makes this rebroadcast so moving is how that ancient commission connects directly to the actual modern mission of the Greymoor Friars who produced the program.
At the end of the recording, Father Robert speaks about the friars' work at St. Christopher's Inn on Atonement Mountain in New York.
He describes how they serve homeless men from all walks of life, men suffering from alcoholism and addiction. He says they are called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home those who have lost their way.
It shows how the Great Commission from the mountaintop translates into literal physical charity centuries later. The friars are not just broadcasting a historical drama, they are feeding the sheep.
They are standing in the mud with their eyes full of heaven, offering rest to those who are borne down by the world.
We have been talking a great deal about the theological necessity of leaving a safe space, of stepping out of the enclosed room. But what happens when someone simply refuses to leave?
That is a very dangerous sort of stasis.
If you are listening to this right now, you have probably felt that exact pang of nostalgia at some point in your life. Walking through your old high school or college campus, or visiting a childhood home and feeling almost like a ghost haunting your own memories.
Why does that hurt so much? And how dangerous can that hurt become if it is left unchecked?
That question brings us to our final source for today's deep dive. It is a new Chesterton Radio original story, a mystery titled The Adventure of the Enchanted Place.
It is treated as a prestige, atmospheric mystery drama starring the recurring character of Father Brown, and the setting is meticulously, achingly rendered.
The story opens on the morning of commencement here at Benedictine College in Atchison.
The prose paints a picture that is immediately recognizable to anyone who has lived in a university town. The bells ringing, the graduates in black gowns moving beneath the cottonwoods like solemn birds preparing for migration.
The parents standing in the warm Kansas wind, trying to smile while carrying what the author beautifully calls the peculiar grief of happiness.
The peculiar grief of happiness. That phrase alone establishes the emotional terrain of the entire story.
A commencement is a celebration, but it's fundamentally a celebration of an ending. It is the moment when an enclosed, beautiful world is fractured forever.
Father Brown is standing on the campus, looking exactly like a priest who had accidentally wandered into the wrong celebration. He is speaking with a professor, observing the graduates.
And the professor remarks that the trouble with commencements is discovering that happiness has an ending. Father Brown replies very quietly, "No, only childhood does."
That distinction sets the philosophical stage for the tragedy that follows, because the serene morning is shattered when a student runs across the lawn in terror.
Dr. Edmund Bellamy, the most beloved literature professor on campus, A silver-haired man who had taught for 40 years has been found murdered in his ivy-covered office.
The scene in the office is chilling. Dr. Bellamy is sitting behind his desk as if asleep, a narrow blade wound beneath his ear.
But it is the clues left behind that elevate this from a simple murder mystery into a profound meditation on sorrow. Pinned to the bulletin board is a page carefully torn from a children's book.
The House at Pooh Corner. It is the chapter where Christopher Robin is leaving the 100-acre wood.
The printed text on the torn page reads, "Promise you won't forget about me." And beneath it, the killer has written in dark ink, "You always do."
A second note is later found in the campus chapel, resting on a pew beneath the crucifix, another torn page from Pooh.
The handwritten message reads, "This is the enchanted place, but everybody leaves it."
The heartbreak in those notes is almost suffocating.
The police lieutenant, Harper, assumes the killer is mocking the victim, but Father Brown sees immediately that the notes are not arrogant, they are childish.
They are the desperate cry of someone who feels entirely abandoned.
This leads Father Brown to an observation about loneliness that requires us to pause and really consider it. He says, "Most lonely people are harmless because they know they are lonely. The dangerous people are lonely people who believe they have been abandoned."
It is a devastating psychological insight. A lonely person simply exists in isolation. They might be sad, but they recognize their state as a circumstance.
An abandoned person, however, believes they were owed a presence that was unjustly taken from them.
They perceive their isolation not as a circumstance, but as a betrayal. Abandonment breeds a sense of entitlement to the person who left.
This theme of abandonment brings us to the story's tragic red herring, a man named Tommy Keene.
He is a maintenance worker on campus, a man who took Dr. Bellamy's seminar 20 years ago and simply never left Atchison.
He stayed in the shadow of the college. When questioned in the chapel, weeping, he admits that Bellamy made the world feel enchanted, made literature and friendship feel eternal. And then he says, everybody went away.
He stayed because, in his own bitter words, some fools never leave the 100-acre wood.
He is a portrait of arrested development. He represents the danger of nostalgia when it is allowed to fester into paralysis.
But Father Brown knows instantly that Tommy Keene is not the killer. Keene's grief is genuine, but he lacks the violent entitlement necessary to commit murder. He is merely sad.
The killer is something much more dangerous. The true killer, as Father Brown ultimately deduces, is a young graduate student named Julian Mercer.
The weapon, an antique letter opener, is found hidden behind Bellamy's bookshelves.
But the solution to the mystery relies not on physical clues, but on Father Brown's profound understanding of the human soul. Father Brown explains the moral paradox at the heart of the crime.
He asks if we know what is truly terrible about nostalgia. He says it is almost entirely selfish.
We speak romantically about memory, but very often what we really mean is possession. We want moments to remain ours forever. We want people never to change.
Mercer believed Bellamy had betrayed him merely by continuing to love new students after the old ones had gone.
He wanted to stop time. He wanted to freeze the enchanted place so that he would never have to experience the pain of leaving it or the pain of watching others enter it.
If you think about the mechanism of how we preserve things, a museum preserves dead things perfectly.
You can walk into a museum and the artifacts will be exactly where you left them 10 years ago, under the glass. They are safe, but they are lifeless.
A school or a family or any community of genuine love must let living things leave in order to survive.
Mercer wanted to turn the university into a museum. He wanted to pin Dr. Bellamy to the desk like a butterfly to a board so that the professor could never move on to another class, another generation.
The priest says, love is not possession. Love is sacrifice. That is why Christianity ends not with childhood, but with sainthood.
Dr. Bellamy had devoted his life to awakening souls, to giving young people courage and faith and beauty. But Julian Mercer mistook that profound gratitude for ownership.
The final scene between Father Brown and Julian Mercer in the interview room is breathtaking. Mercer is not a monster. He is just young, exhausted, and terribly sad.
He cries out that Bellamy promised them that beauty and friendship matter, that the place was eternal. But then, Mercer says, everybody leaves. They graduate, marry, forget each other, become ordinary.
He asks Father Brown what the point is if it all ends.
Father Brown's response is the absolute philosophical climax of the story. He tells the young man that he has committed the oldest mistake in the world, believing that the enchanted place was the destination.
He says childhood is not heaven. It is only the road to heaven. Friendship is not destroyed by time unless it was only sentiment to begin with. Love does not die because people leave college. It merely becomes harder and therefore more real.
Mercer weeps and says he only wanted to stop time. And Father Brown delivers a conclusion so beautiful and so devastating that it reframes the entire concept of growing up.
He tells the boy that he killed the professor because the professor understood something the boy did not. That the whole purpose of an enchanted place is to teach us how to leave it.
The whole purpose of an enchanted place is to teach us how to leave it.
It is a remarkable thought.
Childhood ends so that charity can begin. You are given the 100-acre wood, you are given the beautiful enclosed campus, you are given the mountaintop with the transfigured Christ, not so you can build a tent and stay there forever, but so that you can gather enough light and courage to survive the dark roads of the actual world.
If we connect that directly back to Christ leaving the apostles in the gospel reading, the 3 years they spent walking the roads of Galilee with him, listening to him teach, watching the miracles, that was their enchanted place.
It was a time of intense, enclosed intimacy.
But if he had never left them, if he had stayed a physical, localized presence in Jerusalem forever, the Great Commission would never have happened.
They would have become possessive of him. They would have built a wall around him to keep him for themselves, much like Julian Mercer tried to keep the professor.
The Ascension was the breaking of the enchanted place so that the grace found there could be scattered across the entire globe.
Love is not possession, it is sacrifice. Christ had to ascend so that the Holy Spirit could descend, so that fishermen could become martyrs, so that gazers could become witnesses.
As we weave the threads of this morning together, we see this pattern repeating across all our sources. The apostles must leave the Mount of Olives and go down into the hostile streets of Jerusalem.
Christopher Robin must leave the 100-acre wood and go to school.
The graduates must leave the lawns of Benedictine College and enter the complexities of adult life. They all must step out of the enclosed, beautiful world and into the uncertain future.
And doing so requires an immense amount of courage. The kind of courage that can only be sustained by the promise that we are not entirely alone in the dark.
Outside our window now, the storm that has been gathering all morning has finally arrived.
He is coming down hard.
The sky over the river is the color of bruised iron. The rain has begun to fall, a steady, heavy drumming against the brick and the glass. The wind is shaking the wet leaves of the cottonwoods.
We are sitting in this room, watching the weather change, and reflecting on the strange, enduring beauty of these old stories.
There is a steadying power in the liturgy, in the quiet companionship of sharing this early morning space with you. As the rain falls, washing the streets clean, it feels as though the air itself has been cleared of some heavy anticipation.
The thunder will come, the lightning will flash, but we are anchored in the quiet rhythm of the hours, in the old truths sounding in a new morning.
It leaves us with a quiet question to carry into the day. As you listen to the rain, or watch the dawn, or sit in the stillness of whatever room you find yourself in, consider the landscapes of your own history.
What enchanted place in your own life are you holding on to too tightly? What beautiful memory, what comfortable routine, what close circle of friends have you tried to freeze in time, terrified of the inevitable change?
And perhaps more importantly, what difficult, necessary mission is waiting for you in the mud of the real world once you finally find the courage to leave the mountaintop?
It is a question that requires silence to answer. A silence we hope this broadcast has helped to create for you.
If the quiet rhythm of these broadcasts, the atmospheric mysteries, and the literary reflections have become a comforting part of your daily routine, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Chesterton Radio on Substack.
By subscribing, you support the mission of carrying this steady light into uncertain days, preserving the reverence of the old radio dramas, and sounding the ancient truths for a modern world.
Thank you for sitting with us this morning. Thank you for sharing the silence, the stories, and the approaching storm.
May your day be filled with the courage to walk the road ahead, trusting in the unseen presence that remains, even when the enchanted places are left behind.